Today, I'm going to be going over some basic components of your camera settings that are going to help you create correct exposure for your image. So that means it's not too light, it's not too dark, your highlights are visible, and your shadows still have detail in them. So we're going to be going over the components of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, as well as three additional tools that you can use to create better, more intriguing compositions for your photographs. So to start off, an exposure is the act of letting light strike your photographic film or your sensor. It can also be referring to the time or the duration of which that light is hitting your sensor or your film. And it is also the amount of light that is reaching that sensor or film. This is all created by controlling your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. In this picture, you can see on the left-hand side, it's underexposed. It hasn't gotten enough light, so it's really hard to see details. The middle image is correctly exposed. You've got highlights that have detail, shadows that have detail, and a good range in between that. And all the way over to the right-hand side, it's completely blown out. You can't really see everything that's there. So these tools are going to help you get correctly exposed images. So I like to think about your exposure as a seesaw. Okay, so one side goes up, the other side's going to go down, and you want it to be in equilibrium. So if you're changing one component, you got to change the other one to balance it back out. To make this a tiny bit more complicated, instead of it just being a two-person seesaw, it's a triangular three-person seesaw. So on one side, you've got exposure, the other shutter speed, and the other one aperture. If you change any of those components or just one of them, it's going to affect the overall exposure and light within your image. So you want to make sure that you're metering for proper exposure and then adjusting those settings as you need to. And we're going to go through that in more detail. So this is kind of just a chart showing that, all right? If you change one thing, you got to change another to create that correct exposure. All of those images on the left-hand side came out with a similar result, but they all utilize different camera control settings to get there. And on the right-hand image, it's talking about the size of the aperture in comparison to also how long you're going to need to expose your image for based off of the size of that opening and how much light is reaching and striking your sensor. We're going to go through that in detail, so if it doesn't make sense yet, don't worry. So ISO is basically just the sensitivity of your film or your sensor to light. And there are trade-offs. So a higher ISO is going to be more sensitive to light, which means you can shoot in lower light settings. However, it's also going to increase the grain that you're seeing in your image. The trade-offs for having a lower ISO, such as ISO 100, is that you're going to get beautiful smooth grain. You're not going to get that pixelization, distortion, or noise there. However, it's going to not be as sensitive to light. So you might have to have it on a tripod. You might have to adjust your other settings, and you might not be able to get the image that you really want based off of that. So you can see on the left, shot with ISO 100, super clean. On the right-hand side, you can see it's getting really noisy and breaking up in there in the details because it's gone up to such a high ISO number. And this just shows you going from ISO 100 to 3200. And you can see how it starts to get a little bit noisier as you go up. They've changed their other camera settings to make sure that they're getting proper exposure here as well. This is just another visual of what that grain and distortion could look like. I think this image is really helpful to look at because all they're doing here is changing the ISO. That is the only setting on their camera that is getting changed for this image. All the other settings are staying the same, so that's why you can see how it's going from really dark to overblown and overexposed. What's really fascinating about your ISO control is if you are shooting in a studio, you can use your ISO to change your backdrop and go from a gray backdrop to a white backdrop or a gray to a black backdrop. Shutter speed. This is really important if you want to make sure that your images are sharp and that there isn't any blur. It's also helpful if you're considering how much light do you have around you. The slower the shutter speed, the longer your shutter is going to stay open, so the more light will strike that sensor. So you'll be able to get more detail. However, at a certain point, you're not going to be able to hand hold your camera because you will show a bunch of shake. On the other end, a faster shutter speed is really going to freeze that motion and stop action. So you can see fast versus slow here. And these are in fractions, so it's 1/120th of a second. That's how quick, or the duration of the shutter staying open. And on the right-hand side, that's staying open for 4/1 or 4 seconds. You can create different effects by changing the speed of your shutter. You can also do long-term um, shutter openings to create different time elapses. This would be an image that would require really fast shutter speed to freeze motion. This image is freezing those people in motion, but you can see there's starting to be a little bit of blur on the feet of the person up at the front right here. So aperture. Aperture is one of the coolest settings on your camera because not only is it helping you get proper exposure by determining how much light is striking your sensor, but it is also allowing you to control the depth of field. So how much within your image range is going to be in focus. These are also fractional numbers. So 1/32 is going to be a very small aperture opening, all the way over to f1.4 or 1/1.4 is going to be a much larger opening. So you can see right here, smaller, much larger. And this image is showing you the correlation of the smaller the hole, the way that the light is traveling and the image is going to be captured by the sensor, it's going to allow for a full range of depth of field. However, if you have a huge, big old aperture, you're going to get this beautiful, beautiful shallow depth of field where your focal point is in focus, but everything else back behind that is receding and blurring, or blurring in the foreground as well. This is just an image of a camera lens to show you what it looks like when you're actually changing the f-stops on, or the aperture settings on your lens. So you can see it goes from really wide open over here all the way over to a much smaller opening over here at f22. Again, this is just another visual representation of it. This concept can be really confusing, especially when you're learning all three of these components at once. So that's why I like to add a lot of extra images here. So shallow depth of field when it's a much bigger opening, deep depth of field or full depth of field or full range of field when it's a much shallower depth of field. And this is all determined by the way that the light is coming in through that lens and striking your sensor. Again, another visual representation. And you can see how here, over here, it's f1.4. It's a large opening. There's only going to be one piece of it that's going to be in focus, and they've picked this pair right here to be in focus. Everything else is blurring out. So right here, they've changed their f-stop to f5.6. So they're getting a wider range of depth here, and all the way up to f22, complete depth of field. Another image just kind of illustrating that. I like this egg image because you can just see that comparison of how it's every single image, that main focal point is starting at that first egg, but you can see how the background is dropping off based off of what the aperture setting is set to. So this image would have a shallow depth of field, and its focal point would be right here on this toad. This adorable kitty, similar to the toad, it's going to have a focal point right here. You can see the foreground is starting to blur, the background is starting to blur. So that's going to be a large aperture opening. This is an image by Ansel Adams. He's an amazing photographer. If you're not familiar with his work, you should look it up. Gorgeous stuff, really technically incredible for the time period in which he was taking it and the conditions under which he was exposing and developing his film. This was shot at f22, so a very teeny tiny exposure, and it would have been a longer exposure because that hole that's allowing light in is much smaller. So it's going to need a longer shutter speed time in order to get your proper exposure. And you can see in this image, we've got detail even in these shadows over here and all the way up into these highlights. He was a master of tonal range. So making sure that that range of colors, that gradient going from blackest black all the way up to whitest white, there are shades in between there all along the way. So this is a great illustration of a very shallow depth of field and potentially a micro lens that was used with a very fast shutter speed as well. So short opening so it could freeze and capture that motion, large opening so the background is blurred, and then you can tell by looking at it there isn't a lot of grain there, so we've probably got like a really nice ISO on this, probably under 800 for sure, like maybe 400. And there's plenty of surrounding light during the daytime in this image, so that helped allow this image to be captured as well. This image you can see in the foreground, she's in focus and the background recedes. And in addition to that, you can see that her hair is starting in some places to be frozen in motion, in other places it's moving a little bit faster and it's getting a little bit blurred. All right, you guys have done great. That was so much content in a really short period of time. And normally we would go through that, test that out on the cameras, look at those images, reshoot, test again, and see the difference there. So I'm sorry that you're not getting that right now. Just bear with us. And please, again, feel free to review this PowerPoint, relook at those images. So the last three things I'm going to talk about real quick today are exposure bracketing, which will help you make sure that you are getting a properly exposed image, especially as you're starting out with your photography or learning or developing your skills. It's a useful technique to start with. Or if you're in a tricky lighting situation, you're just really wanting to ensure that your image that you get finally, it has proper exposure. The next is rule of thirds, and the final will be frame within a frame. So let's start with exposure bracketing. It's a technique where instead of just shooting one image, you're going to take 3 or more images, and they're all exposed at a slightly different rate. So your middle image here in this image is correctly exposed. So it's based off of its light meter saying, hey, this is proper exposure based off of the settings that you've gotten to now. Go ahead and take your image. And then what you would do is you would also then shoot one that's underexposed a little bit and one that's slightly overexposed. And that way you're going to ensure that you get a proper image. So potentially maybe there's something off with your light meter. Maybe there's really, really hot highlights and really, really dark shadows. This is going to help make sure you get a proper image. This is just another example of showing kind of bracketing and also proper exposure versus under versus overexposure. And here's another image showing how somebody has done the standard exposure, then they've decreased or underexposed, and then they've done an increased or overexposed image as well. And one more. All right, breezing right along, we're going to talk about rule of thirds. So this is a part of composing your image, considering where all of those elements are going to line up within the frame of your lens. It's based on where that subject hits at certain points. So let's pretend, and you can look at this graphic right here because that'll help. Let's pretend, and you probably have seen this if you ever used Instagram, they have this grid set up on there, and that's where this grid comes from, is this principle in art. So basically, you're mentally dividing your frame if you don't have like a grid overlay on there. And you're making a tic-tac-toe board, and anywhere where those lines intersect, right here, right here, right here, or right here, those are going to be points where if you place your subject, it's going to feel more balanced or potentially more interesting. So it could help you get more dynamic energy. It could be a good use of positive and negative space within your image. But I also want you to keep in mind that this is not a hard and fast rule. You do not have to shoot every single image like this. It's just a good technique to start to think about how and where am I placing my subject within my frame. It's also based off of mathematical principles, psychology, science, kind of what we feel is pleasing to our eye and is balanced within a frame. This does not mean that you can't put an image or a subject right smack in the middle of your picture. That's completely allowable. So just want to point that out. This is a suggestion. It's a technique you can use. You do not have to use it as a hard and fast rule. Here's just an example of a couple images that have been utilizing rule of thirds, and you can see where the main subject of this butterfly is hitting on these points. You can see this bumblebee as well. If you're interested in food photography, think about like the angle that you're photographing. This is an aerial view of a table. And as well, it is creating interest right here as well, and then balancing a little bit more up right here. This use of negative space in this image really helps your eye flow through the space and be able to look at all the different details without being too overwhelmed. Rule of thirds again. Rule of thirds hitting right here and right here. Interesting composition right here. This is nice because it allows your eye to have some space to move over here. So your eye can travel through the image, goes directly to this main subject right here, and then you can kind of take in the background surroundings, and that helps build your understanding of the image and what you're looking at. Rule of thirds hitting twice right here and right here. And to point out, I really like the composition on this photograph as well as the use of a shallower depth of field. He is not completely blurred out, but he is starting to be blurred out. So we're getting this really sharp focus on her while still getting this duality of having two subjects in the image. You can see the cat's hitting right here and the eyes are hitting on this point right there. All right, we're going to talk about frame within a frame. So this is utilizing an object or part of your subject within your composition to create a frame around your subject, just pulling your eye in to this. So not only are these borders, these edges right here, the frame of your image, within this image, you can also see that these arms right here are creating another frame around this person's head at that spot. This image, you can see that this frame is created not only by these lines right here of the blinds, but also this arc in the window and where the light is coming in. This one is just utilizing, again, this window frame, this light and shadow that's happening as well. This one is using a fence to help highlight this bird right here and just shooting straight through it. This one is shooting up through a very cool circular building. So you're getting not only this interior architecture and shadow and depth and interesting light and lines going on here, you're also getting this element of sky being framed. And this image as well, we are seeing how these people right here and right here are framing this individual right there. You can use your own arms to help frame yourself. So it's thinking about what do you have access to, what are in your surroundings, and keeping your eyes open as you're looking around and photographing. All right, we are on our last slide. You guys have done great. Thank you for bearing with me. So this week's photo challenge scavenger hunt, the virtual version #1. So the goal is for you to take at least one really solid image for each of these components. That means you're taking multiple pictures to get that one solid image. So you're going to do a depth of field where it's shallow, a depth of field where it's deep, where you've got that full depth of field. You're going to do exposure bracketing. So underexpose, proper expose, overexpose. Rule of thirds, portrait, frame within a frame, lines, your choice, and panning. And there will be a handout for panning on the website. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it was helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in and making art. Stay safe.